Good morning, guys. Welcome to today's training. Hopefully it kicks into gear here on Facebook, but it's good to see you. If you're new to me, I'm Burtcher, and I help survivors of narcissistic relationships, people that wrestle with codependency and love addiction, rediscover their happiness after those things through 3 simple phases: healing yourself, knowing yourself, and sharing yourself. So that's what we do here. We gotta share this out to the community. If you're not familiar with what the community is, because I'm trying to choose different words and saying, well, if you're new to me, that kind of thing. The link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. But the community is where you can find more guidance, more tools, more training, shelter, a place of safety in the storm you may be facing in your life, or the wrestle you may be experiencing in your own healing, your own well-being. So yes, join us there. We'll be glad to have you. There's almost 2,000 of us there right now, and you can see how you are not alone, you're not crazy, and then you can get support and understanding that will add to your healing and your well-being and lead you farther down that road towards happiness after codependency. So you can do that above. Let me share it out to the community here real quick. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Wrong buttons. My brain's a little slow today. All right. Ooh, there we go. Okay. So, here we go. Today, we're talking about separating your value from their behavior. This is one of the biggies when it comes to healing codependency. It's really about evolving beyond the codependency, beyond the enmeshment of our worth with that person. And a critical component of this is separating our value from their behavior. We interpret people's responses to us as a signal of our value. And this comes from transactional love, or transactional relating, where we earn love, we earn approval, we earn our sense of worth through how people respond to us. And this puts us in a huge vat of vulnerability. We become very exposed and highly susceptible to manipulation and to seeing reality incorrectly. Okay, because people are going to do what they do, and if our brain is oriented towards interpreting our value in response to or through their behaviors, we can interpret benign signals, benign behaviors as something as a threat to us. We can interpret difference as a threat or a danger to ourselves or to the relationship. We can interpret love bombing and seduction as a huge validation about our worth, and that kicks in the euphoria stage of the emotional cycle of euphoria, distress, and despair that happens when we go through a seduction, abuse, discard cycle with an unhealthy person. It can confuse us quite greatly with healthy people, because healthy people are going to say no to things. Healthy people are going to be disappointed. Healthy people are going to confront us on things. And if we're interpreting our value based on their behavior, those signals can feel very aggressive and confusing and upsetting. They can really trigger us and put us into states, or into mind and emotional states, that aren't rational to the context that we're dealing with. We can see things that aren't there that end up motivating us to do things that sabotage healthy relationships and motivate us to stay in things that are fundamentally unhealthy. So this is a biggie. When we have to acknowledge that, hey, if their behavior is defining how I feel about myself, I am coming from a codependent enmeshed perspective, and I need to own it. I need to acknowledge it, put it on the table, deal with it up front. That's essential to your sanity and to your well-being. Once you're able to identify that, then we have to extract your value from their behavior, and this happens in a process. This is an ongoing practice. This is not an event. And this is something we focus on very, very deeply in the latter half of From Addiction to Connection, and then the first half of the happiness strategy. I call it value retrieval. Value retrieval is the idea that my value is inherent. It's innate. It's built into me. I have intrinsic worth. My job is to train my brain to acknowledge it, accept it, and tune into it so that I can feel that value and then start living from that value. That's a process called lensing that we teach exclusively in the happiness strategy. It's not taught anywhere else. But when we get in tune with that innate value, which can be joy or play or peace, it has different expressions of itself. But one thing it consistently does is it separates us from them. We become more autonomous, more individualized, more of a sense of realness of ourselves, and then a space between us and them that allows us to recognize toxic or healthy patterns of behavior in them and recognize how we feel about the way they treat us. See, we've changed the equation. Rather than their behavior defining our worth, their behavior defines who they are to us. It demonstrates who they want to be. Notice I'm not saying anything about words. I'm not saying anything about promises. I'm not saying anything about claims that they make. Patterns of behavior. That's where reality is. This is what we have to acknowledge. When we get it, like if we encounter someone new and our gut's like, shh, beware, shit, red alert, we stop and we observe. If we have like a really strong sense, like, don't hang around this, follow it, see what happens. Trust yourself over the words of other people. Trust your awareness and allow that awareness to have space so it can prove itself. Keep yourself safe. Your well-being comes first. One of the challenges with codependency is we tend to have this fantasy that everybody's good. Everybody's trying their best. I call this undue positive warm regard. I don't personally believe everybody's doing their best. There are malicious people in the world. There are people out there that have malicious intent, whether it's conscious or not. They live and function in a way that harms other people. That's a fact. I know. I lived with a couple of them. I've encountered them repeatedly throughout my life because that's part of the, you could say, ecology of the human experience. So when we're willing to get sober about that and accept that there are people out there that don't care about doing their best, they actually enjoy the not caring. They enjoy being engaged in malicious ways. If we acknowledge that, we become powerful because then we can tune into and understand our own intuition, our own awareness. Because we got this. Our body's like, something's off with this person. We just, not a good thing. Honor that. Sit back and watch what they do if you're going to be in their proximity for a bit. Or if they're in like a friend's circle or something. Now, if it's just somebody at the store, just walk away. You don't have to figure that out. If it's someone that you're dating, huge red flag, just stop. And then you can do a couple of little things. You like say no to something. You can also say, hey, I'm not really interested in this anymore, and walk away and watch what they do. Another thing I tend to do with gut instinct, especially when I was dating, is if the person felt off to me, I just move on. Because dating doesn't have any commitment. It doesn't have any... I don't need to give people a lot of chances. My goal is to reduce the time between where I am now and being in a healthy relationship if I'm in the dating mode. And that means, my gut's off on this one. I'm just going to move to the next one. Allow myself to have a little more trust in my own perception. Because I'll tell you, when I have not trusted that, I've paid the price. It's not been a fun one. So be mindful of that. Guys, when we are willing to make reality more real to us by acknowledging that these things actually exist, Then we can be sober and we can be safer. And then we can work towards separating our value from their behavior, because their behavior defines them, their sense of value, their perspective. It is literally 0%, 100% of the time to do with us. If we're willing to accept that people are truly autonomous, then we can accept that people have their own programming. And that programming dictates how they respond to the stimulus they experience. This is why I approach it this way. Brain A will respond to situation B differently than brain C will, because they are programmed differently. Now, this is where the fantasy of I can fix them or I can change their brain, their programming comes in. No, you can't. Only they can. And they can only change it if they want to. And here comes the other fantasy, I can help them fix it, I can convince them. No, you can't. That's not even your job. That's their job. See, codependents love the fixer realm because they want to be rescued. They want to feel valued by being rescued and protected. So they enmesh their value in the other person by trying to fix them, hoping that they'll respond and reciprocate. We want to be rescued. We're the rescuer of ourselves. We're always fundamentally going to come down to that state. Now, as a child, if you were abandoned, abused, neglected, you look to the parent to be the rescuer, and that was a rational response because that's what the biology would have us do. Our parent ought to be our protector. When our parent is the danger, we try to fix the parent so they become the protector, and that's what we're looking for. And we're repeating this kind of pattern in our adult relationships. Undoing that requires us to separate our value from them and then become very, very clear about our own behavior and their behavior. We have to separate from it and realize this person behaves this way because of their nature, their programming. And that is none of my business to fix or change. My business is to understand how I feel about the way they treat me and then respond appropriately according to valuing my well-being and my happiness. At least that's how I approach it. And with that foundation, that guideline, my life's improved drastically. Because now I don't have toxic relationships in my life. I don't have the drama. I have calm, loving, kind relationships that love and respect me, and I love and respect them. It's an honest experience. It's a consensual experience. Now, to kind of narrow this down, because I now ran on some rabbit trails there, separating our value from their behavior starts with retrieving our value from them. What retrieval really involves is I become the authority about my worth. For me, it's a visual experience of taking, and value shows up as this golden orb for me. So I retrieve the golden orb and I bring it back into my body and I feel wherever it clicks in. Sometimes it's in the chest or the stomach, the kidneys, whatever. It goes in there and I connect with it. And I let that energy move through me. And I give myself permission to access an unconditional love that typically emerges out of that experience where it's like, here I am. This is enough. I am whole. Boom. I'm back in my innate value. And then I can view them through that lens and go, wow, they've got some really toxic behavior. I don't like that. In fact, what I have found consistently when I retrieve value from other people or from relationships I am in, I have a much more honest point of view about where I stand with them. And a lot of times, especially early on in this, I realized I didn't want the relationship that much. I wanted something different, maybe a friendship with them, or nothing at all. And so I moved on. Because I was seeking my value through that experience. I've also done this with work. I've done this with business. I've done this with clients. I've done this with food. I've done this with sex. I've done this with money. You really want to liberate yourself back into your power, your freedom, your individuality. Retrieve your value from money. Retrieve it from sex. Retrieve it from pleasure. And you'll start to realize how much you've chased your value through things outside of yourself. This separation allows you to start to identify yourself. This is a process called self-reference or internal orientation. And when we're able to reference, identify, and acknowledge what we feel and what we think in response to somebody else's behavior, we become free again. Because now we can make empowered decisions about what matters to us. This is where happiness starts to show up in time. At a minimum, we start to have more peace and more calm. So separating our value from their behavior is essential. We need to return to them the responsibility of their behavior. We need to let them be what they are, guys. We have to let them be what they choose to be. Get out of the fantasy of potential. Well, they could be this. And acknowledge what they choose to be and respect that. Because when you do that, then you're separate. You go like, wow, they choose to be this and I don't like it. Then you have an honest position. Or wow, they choose to be this and this is very attractive to me. Cool. Now you have something to go on there too. The goal is honest, sober experience, acknowledgement of the other person. That's it. We don't have to change anybody. We don't have to fix them. That's not our job anymore. Our job is to determine who is healthy and a good fit for our well-being and happiness. And if they're open to it and they share the same value and interest, build a relationship, whether that's a friendship or intimate relationship, a business relationship, whatever it might be. Build it. There you go. So there you go, guys. Let's see. We got a lot of comments. So yeah, probably not the fantasy's a biggie. Especially like, oh, everybody's good. Nope. I think everyone is doing their very best and wants to, but it's not so. Yeah. No. There's a lot of people that don't care. They just don't give a shit about it. It's not important to them. They're in it for what's called the benefit. They're in it for or donut or a cookie. They want the relationship because it provides something to them. That's benefit-centered relating. The opposite of that, which is what most codependents are seeking, is connection-centered relationship. They want an emotional experience and connection with another human being. And then because we're patterned based on the relationship we have with our parents, typically, we seek out people who are benefit-centered, which our parents were, and then we try to change them because that's all we've ever known as love and attraction. So we have to rewrite that programming and come back into connection and discover what it's like to really be received and kept rather than to chase and try to change people. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of thinking everybody is good. I'm a big fan of seeing people for what they demonstrate themselves to be. I like an honest experience because not everybody is good. Everybody, I believe, has potential to be good, but I also believe people have the autonomy and the authority to determine what they do. And I have no right to interfere in that. That's it. The only place I have real influence would be my children or my students, my clients, myself, or people open to my influence. And I want that to be by consent. And that's where we build power, we build accountability, we build trust, we build vulnerability, we build connection. So yeah, I'm a big fan of just seeing people for what they choose to be and then seeing how they fit with me. And if they don't, I move on. I have no interest in forcing people to be something they're not. Yeah, there are many, some are selfish and absolutely lack empathy. It is a challenge that way. Yeah, projecting self onto them. Exactly, Rose. We take our person and put it onto them rather than seeing who they are. This also robs us in some other ways because when we don't actively acknowledge who someone is, we can't see how they're attempting to connect with us either. I had a problem years ago where I misunderstood people's attempts or bids for connection when they would say no, or when they would have a boundary or an opinion on something, or they would give me feedback about how I'm affecting their world. And these were healthy people. They were just trying to adjust and protect the vulnerability of the relationship, and I would get very angry because I expected them to be something else rather than me acknowledging who they are and what their limits and preferences are too. This is where consent clicked into my world. It's like, oh, I have no right to demand anything from anybody, period. Relationship is based on a privilege, something people agree to. So I need to understand who they are and understand what they're looking for and how they want it to see if it really lines up with me so that we can have an honest experience. Yeah, let's see. What? Retrieving value. Yeah. Some people call it, if that's what you're referencing, Rose, you'd be looking at like a soul retrieval component. Because I was trained in shamanic practices. That's where I started out at, actually. So it's a derivative of that approach. Yeah, let me directly into the arms of a sociopath. Yep. Good. Thank you, Pavlina. I appreciate you too. Oh, it's very unique. Yeah, good. That's what I want. I just want to put it out there in a way that makes sense and is useful for you guys, because I'll tell you, I needed this stuff when I was emerging out of it, and did not exist. I looked high and low. And there's some really compelling and effective people out there that teach on these things, but it wasn't making any difference to me. Knowledge was, oh, cool, yeah, you had the same experience. When I get into the gritty of it, the process of it, the theory behind it, what's really going on, that's where I started to see change. And that happened because I got into that space. Now, here we are. So I appreciate you guys showing up. I appreciate your contributions and who you are, and for being the badass you be, because that's what this is. We really are pretty awesome that way. This takes guts. It's not an easy thing. It's a courageous path. And I'm proud of you for taking it and doing it for you. Well, guys, that concludes today's training. Go out there, separate yourself from other people's behavior. Begin to give yourself permission to acknowledge that that's them, and then wrestle with whatever loneliness or emptiness might come up with that. Give people back their behaviors and responsibility for it. Leave it over in their yard. Retrieve your value. Lean into trusting your own experience. And let's see how that changes your world and your happiness. Okay. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And I will see you guys in our next video. Bye-bye.